Hola a todos, muchas gracias por acompañarme el día de hoy. Hoy tengo el inmenso placer y gusto que tengo junto a mí a nada más y nada menos que a Jane Nelson, que nos va a hablar de un tema súper importante para todos como padres a la hora de educar, que son los errores que ella personalmente ha cometido a la hora de educar a sus hijos. Hi Jane, thank you so much for being with me today.
Gracias and buenos días. ¿Cómo está?
Happy to be with you. Happy to be with you, Jane.
Well, you just heard the extent of my Spanish. Not really. I memorized a whole song on Júrame que aunque pase mucho tiempo, pensarás en el momento. That's as far as I will go. But it is such an honor to me to be here. I just absolutely adore all my Spanish friends, and I'm just so excited that Positive Discipline has given me this opportunity to meet so many people all over the world.
I know it's a joy. It's really a big joy. So, if someone that's listening to us doesn't know who you are, I'm going to explain to them briefly who is Jane Nelson. Les cuento que Jane Nelson es la creadora de Disciplina Positiva, esta maravillosa filosofía de vida y método educativo. Y junto a Lynn Lott trabajaron para crear algunos libros, coescribir algunos libros y crearon varios talleres educativos. Por otro lado, es mamá de 7 hijos, tiene 22 nietos, 20 bisnietos y 2 más que vienen en camino. Y ahora nos va a hablar de este tema que creo que es algo que tenemos siempre presente a la hora de educar madres y padres de familia. So Jane, what can you tell us about mistakes when we are trying to educate our children?
I just have to tell you that there is a reason that see the mistakes are opportunities to learn is my favorite. It's my favorite because, you know, we have this huge mistake in our lives of perfection. And it's not healthy because no one is perfect. And I don't think we ever will be. And in fact, I think that instead of saying to our children, when we send them off to school, so often we say, bye, have a nice day, and be good. No. I think we should say, bye, have a nice day, and make a lot of mistakes to see what you can learn from them. And I truly mean that. If our kids would say, oh, I made a mistake, what can I learn from this? How much healthier is that than, oh, I made a mistake, I'm a terrible person, what are people going to think? No, this is not healthy. And so this is why we emphasize so much. And Rudolf Dreikurs, he kept giving this lecture on the courage to be imperfect. Because in our society, it really does take courage to be imperfect because so many people expect it. But too often we expect it of ourselves.
Yeah.
So I really think that for our children, sometimes at the dinner table, we have everybody share a mistake today and what you learned from it. And so about the parenting skills, I think that it's really, really important that we realize that positive discipline does not mean your kids are going to be perfect, and it does not mean you are going to be perfect, but you will learn many tools for learning from mistakes.
And I think that's great, you know, because what you said before, I think it's really important for us as a parent to have this, how do you say this? Esta mirada compasiva, this kind way of looking at ourselves, because we are the first ones that are going to make mistakes. So, and this is an example for our children too.
Exactly. And, you know, one of the things that I loved about learning about Adlerian psychology, you know, that that's the basis of positive discipline, and Rudolf Dreikurs, and the idea that, okay, so we make mistakes. How do we make this not only okay, but
Mhm.
truly exciting? And the other day I heard one of my grandkids said, "Oh, I made a mistake." With that feeling, I made a mistake. It's like just a fact of life. And then,
Mhm.
what do we do about it?
Mhm.
And so, I'm going to tell you one of my favorite from my daughter Mary, because she's giving me permission. She is my youngest daughter who is now teaching positive discipline. And one day we got into an argument about something, and she just
Mhm.
kept being um, arguing with me. And I finally said to her, I said, "Mary, you are a spoiled brat."
Mhm.
And she said later, "Don't tell me later that you're sorry." And I said, "You don't have to worry because I'm not." And we teach about flipping your lid,
Yes. Yes.
and this is
Mhm.
a human condition, and then we access that midbrain where we just are not rational. And she went in, and this was after I had written positive discipline. Let me just back up a minute and say I have my before, during, and after children.
Mhm.
So the two that were raised before I even learned about positive discipline, and then the three that were 5, 7, and 8, something like that when I was learning and wrote the book, and then the two that came after. And so Mary, and she went in and got her book and started underlining and writing
Mhm.
phony.
Mhm.
And even said, "I'm going to tell Oprah on you." Yeah, we had both lost it a lot.
Yes. Mhm.
But it wasn't too long before we both calmed down and we apologized, and we
Mhm.
talked about what we could do. So yes, there's many, 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 many times that I have made mistakes, and my children who were raised with that are really grateful for that.
Mhm. And you know what? You said something about asking for forgiveness. And I think this is such an important lesson, not only for ourselves, but the way we teach our kids that if you make a mistake, you try to make amends and ask for forgiveness, because it is important to do that. We're not perfect. And I don't think that our children want us to be perfect. They just want us to be human and to be loved by us. So it's so important to ask for forgiveness.
Well, yes, and we have the 3 R's of recovery from mistakes.
Mhm.
And let's just see if we can remember those. It's like the first one is just to recognize that you've made
Mhm.
a mistake.
Yeah.
And then you need to take responsibility. And that's the
Mhm.
part where with not shame and blame, but
Mhm.
I did make this mistake.
Mhm.
And then you reconcile by apologizing and
Mhm.
by focusing on solutions. Say, okay,
Mhm.
now what can we do to resolve the problem?
Mhm. Mhm.
So there's always, and following those steps and teaching the kids, well, what happened? Then that comes with our curiosity questions to help them
Mhm.
uh, explore their mistake. Look, well, what happened? And what do you think caused it to happen? And how do you feel about it? And what ideas do you have to solve the
Mhm.
problem? No shame, no shame.
Mhm. Mhm. And no judgment, right? I mean, no judgment. Just. Mhm.
And if we do slip, because we are human beings who,
Mhm.
um, like the time I called Mary a spoiled brat, that was pretty judgmental.
Mhm.
And that's part of making mistakes, is that we will sometimes just be angry and just say, "I'm
Yeah.
sick and tired of you kids fighting, and you're so spoiled, or you're not doing we're not perfect."
Yeah.
But it's like, uh, this is one of the reasons why one of my favorite tools is to say, let's put this on the agenda,
Mhm. Mhm.
on the family meeting agenda. And the reason for that is so that we can have time to calm down before we have the family meeting, where okay, now let's focus on solutions. And did I already mention that one of the things that we would do at the dinner table at least once a week is have everybody share a mistake they
A
made?
mistake. Yes.
And what, so really emphasizing this a lot. And, you know, there's times when I have been so upset that I have said, I am too angry right now to discuss this. I need to wait till I have some time out to calm down. I'm just too mad right now.
And this is another tool, right? Time out. I mean, it's important to recognize when we ourselves are not able to talk in a calm way, to be calm. So we also have the right to have our time out. And it's important to do that, to recognize it and to have it.
Right. You know, Vanessa, I can't help but mention that even in, you know, we use positive discipline relationships too. And then we have this program called Keeping the Joy in Relationships. But one of the things, even with my husband, when I used to get silent and he thought it was just angry at him. And then I later started saying, I'm going to just get silent until I can calm down. It's not about you. It's about me, knowing that I need to take responsibility and wait till I can calm down. And so to not be mad at ourselves. And, you know, this is one of the best things to say to our kids is, gee, I made a mistake.
Jane, you know, I have like a group of questions over here that are very common between mothers, almost more from coming from mothers. And so I wanted to ask them to you. So maybe you can relate to some of them and you can tell us little anecdotes that you have lived through all these years with your kids. So I'm going to start asking them. Okay, so what happened when they were small, when they were little kids, and maybe you got angry with them because you were tired or because you couldn't sleep well the night before? Did you ever answer them in a wrong way or told them something you later regretted? Do you remember one specific episode?
Many times, and that's why I had to write about the 3 R's of recovery from mistakes. But I even remember one with little Mark when he was only 2, and I just swatted him on his bottom. And I am so against spanking, and I felt terrible. But I don't remember what he'd done now. But and he even though he was only about 2.5, he said, "You're not supposed to hit people." And I said, "Oh, I know, I'm so sorry." And you know, our kids are just so forgiving. You know, they're just so forgiving. You know, they'll always say, "That's okay, Mom. That's okay, Dad." But if we are willing to say, "Yes, I made a mistake," and I apologize. But I think that with my later the 2 that came after, you know, I was really an advocate for them. I want to give you an example of. Like if they forgot their lunch at school and they would call me, and I would, sometimes the principal or the teacher who would call me would get upset because I'm saying, well, I'm sure that they can handle it. You know, they made a mistake and they wanted me to bring it. They couldn't believe I wouldn't bring the lunch or let them borrow money. I said, you know, I'm sure they can handle this. And like Mary tells the story, she says, once I forgot my lunch and they sent me the principal and they were going to call my mom. And I said, she'll just tell you that I can learn from my mistake. And they were so surprised. They thought I was a terrible mother because I was willing to allow my children. I didn't think they would starve to death because kids are so resourceful. She probably found somebody who shared a sandwich or whatever. But, you know, we just get into this catastrophe kind of a thing that we just can't allow our children to make mistakes. Oh, I wanted just one that come to me. You know, another time was when one of my children, I think was only 3 or 4, and he stole some gum from the store. And when I discovered that, we sit down and I said, you know, well, why did you take that? He said, well, the store had a lot. And I said, well, have you ever thought about, it must have been 4 because I was able to ask all these questions. I said, have you ever thought about how much gum the store owner has to sell in order to pay his rent? And how much he has to still to pay his employees and all of it. I said, so what do you think we could do about that? And he said, well, I'll take it back. And I said, do you want to do it by yourself or do you want me to go with you? I can't remember now what he chose, but the whole point is we can be supportive.
Yeah.
Well, this is what we call kind and firm. And kind is not always really nice. Like it was hard for him to have to go and take it back. But because he had that support and learning that it's okay to make mistakes and no shame. We made a mistake. Let's see what we can do to fix it.
Jane, another one that came to me. I want to ask you, since I have 4 girls myself and you had 7 children, what about the times they fought between each other? Did you ever took sides with one of them? What did you say to them? Did you got mad?
Well, let me just tell you this. With the children before, I would take sides all the time. It just got worse. It just made it so much worse. So with my last children, I really learned to just stay out of it, to just and let them know, I have faith in you guys to handle this, or would one of you like to put this on the agenda? But this is what really is hard for most parents to understand, is that children fight more to get you involved because they're upset at each other. And I even remember this one time, because I'm always saying, just leave, stay out of it. And they're so afraid that the kids will kill each other, they'll really hurt. And we were in the family room and the kids started to fight. My husband and I both got up and walked down onto the patio where we could see in, but they couldn't see out. It was dark at night. And we could see it. And what happened is they stopped by and they started looking. Mom, Dad, all of a sudden they started cooperating to look for us rather than fighting. And this is why we have this activity called the 3 Bs, is you beat it, you bear it, or you boot them out. And I would sometimes say, if your kids need to fight, you can go outside and fight, or if you're going to fight, I'm going to leave because it's not fun for me. Most people don't believe that the biggest reason kids fight is for you, to get you involved. Now, you have to also be giving them a model of not fighting. In a husband and wife relationship, if they fight all the time, then, but it's like, we do this activity in the Keeping the Joy in Relationships where we have 2 people pretend they're children and the parents fight and how awful it is for them.
Yeah.
And we say, okay, now what we want you to do is have a couples meeting and solve the problem so they can see that. So again, it's not about being perfect. It's not about not making mistakes. It's about what do you do to solve it.
Jane, and what happened when maybe they came back from school and they came with a bad grade, or you got a call from school because they were misbehaving? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
I have 2 examples of that. One was, again, I want you to know I have permission to tell these stories.
I know.
But one was when Mary was doing really poor. She had a boyfriend problem and she was working. Anyway, she got way, way behind in her grades. And what I did with her, though, is I just sat down and I said, well, what do you think you want to do about this? And she decided she wanted to take home study or whatever. But she figured it out because there was room for her to do that. But one of my favorites was when my son, Mark, who is very, very bright, he's so good at math that I think it was the 98th percentile, really high. And he decided when he was 16 that he was going to drop out of school. And I said, well, okay, you're 16, you don't have to go anymore, but have you thought about what kind of a job you'll get if you drop out? Well, that I could be a contractor. And I said, yeah, you probably, and that was a very honorable profession. I said, but what are some things you couldn't do? And he thought about it and he says, this is what we call curiosity questions, but you have to be truly curious, not generalize it. Because he could tell I was really curious. He said, well, I couldn't be an engineer. And I probably couldn't be a pilot. And then he came to this conclusion. He said, oh, I'm going to go, but I'm not going to like it. And I just said, you know, Mark, you've just discovered something very important. It's like, this is what a lot of successful people do. They do what they don't like now because they see the future.
Mhm.
So to me, if we are focusing on solutions, it's hard because we think that we're in charge. You know, Vanessa, when we have family meetings, and you know, I feel so strongly about family meetings that I think if every family would have family meetings every day, they would have so few problems.
Yeah.
And it is true, when we had family meetings, our kids did not fight as much. They still fought, they're kids, you know, they're siblings, and that's what they do, like little bear cubs, you know, wrestle. But it would go down about 80%. And then we would get busy and stop having family meetings, miss a few, and all of a sudden the fighting would increase so much. So this whole thing of just trying to ask curiosity questions to help them, you know, like with the gum, help him figure out why it's not okay to steal. And with him helping him. Now, people say, well, what if he had said, I don't care, I'm going to quit anyway? I would have said, okay, then I decide what I'm going to do. You'll need to pay rent, you know, and people who, as usual, you know, have certain chores because, and I would say you could have a year to stay here while you're saving enough money to get your own place. So deciding what I will do by being both kind and firm and focusing on solutions as much as possible.
Jane, can I ask you to please explain to us what family meetings are in any case that someone that is listening is not familiar with this tool? What is the family meetings tool?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked because, you know, whenever somebody calls me now and they tell me that they're having a problem, I say, are you having family meetings?
Mm-hmm.
Because I really believe that if you're having family meetings, for one thing, you're teaching kids all the time about focusing on solutions.
Mm-hmm.
Especially when something goes on the agenda, it's because of a mistake that somebody has made. They haven't done their chores, they're fighting, you know. And which is another thing. I'm going to get to family meetings, but one of the things about fighting, and I say, well, would one of you guys like to put this problem on the family meeting, or which one of you? But so family meetings is something I think every family should do once a week. And you have an agenda that's on the refrigerator or someplace where everybody can see it. So that whenever they have a challenge, you can put it on the agenda, or I can. And then you start the family meeting with everybody giving everybody else in the family a compliment. So you're looking for good things to appreciate about each other. And I remember when we started this, and Mary would say, well, I want to compliment Mark for being nice to me, but sometimes, no buts. So you start with these compliments. And then what is fun is when you bring the problem, whatever it is, and you write, how many solutions can we find? And let's be wild and crazy about some of them. Like about chores, they might say, well, let's hire it done. Or let's just get paper plates. And then because you cross off any that are not reasonable, related, respectful. And so that then whatever is left, you choose. And I will tell you this, and then you end, just to go through the whole family meeting process. Usually you can only have time to solve one problem because two reasons family meetings will fail. They're too long, or parents talk too much. Parents get in there and they start acting controlling and telling instead of saying, you know, what's the problem? Let's all brainstorm for solutions and then choose one that works for all of us. And so I remember one mother telling me, well, we had a family meeting about chores and the kids did their chores. So this one mother said, well, we had a family meeting about chores and the kids did their chores for about a week, but then they stopped doing them again. And I said, well, have you done anything else that got them to do their chores for a whole week? And she says, well, no, come to think of it. I said, well, then maybe you need to have it again about chores. And I will say that chores probably came up in our family about at least once a month. where we would have to talk about it. And the kids would come up with all these different plans, like choosing their chores out of a box, or but I remember the one that finally worked the longest was when Mary and Mark were the only two that were left. And I said, okay, I'm going to put 4 chores on this whiteboard every day, and first come, first serve, to do which you choose which 2 you want. Well, first they were racing home from school to try and beat each other to choose, and then oh no, I'm sorry, I forgot. What I would do is I would put 2 for Mark and 2 for Mary at the start. And then they started complaining, how come he gets the easy ones? And so I thought, okay, I'll just put 4. And you can first come, first serve. And that's when they at first race each other. And but then pretty soon they didn't race. They just would, if they were second, they would take what was left. But it worked for the longest time. But it's like there isn't any problem that you can just solve. There's for once and for all, they're usually ongoing. And that's why they have to keep learning the skills every day, to focus on solutions and to look for the good and to complement each other. And I'm going to say this does not mean it will be perfect. I worry about perfect families. If it's perfect, you probably need therapy, because somebody's not feeling human enough to, some kids won't make mistakes because they're too afraid. They're too scared, and they're afraid of it, too afraid, rather than, gee, I can make a mistake and I can learn from it.
Jane, another question. Talking about feelings, do you have ever had a hard time validating any kind of feeling from your kids, and maybe, or any kind of feeling or emotions, and maybe instead use punishment or use rewards? Did it ever happen to you?
Boy, I don't think I ever used rewards. But see, there are some things like as soon as, it's like as soon as this is done, then we'll do that. That might seem like a reward. But Riker said it was okay to do that. So, as soon as the chore's done, then we'll all go get ice cream. But you don't do that unless you really mean it. And say, well, I guess if they don't do it, so I guess it wasn't that important to you. That's okay. It wasn't that, it doesn't matter. You don't do that unless it's something that really matters. Gosh, I must be getting really old. I can't remember. Not must be, I am. But, one of the things that in Positive Discipline, the whole book was written because I would go back in my class. I was taking a class in child development, and I would have a problem, and I would go back and share what the problem was, and then I would learn a new tool for dealing with it. And in the book, even though if it says Mrs. Johnson had this problem, it was probably me. I was just using a different name. There was many times I used names. But one of the things is I did not want to write about anything that I had not either practiced myself, a success story, or that somebody hadn't told me a true story. I do remember one where we were backpacking, and it was with Mark was the only one that went down, but my husband and Mark and a bunch of friends, and we had these heavy backpacks. We went down this very steep incline. And when we were coming back up, Mark kept complaining that his backpack hurt. And his father was being kind of facetious. Oh, you're the son of a Marine, you can handle it. And he finally, which was not, he was joking, but Mark didn't think it was funny. So we got about a fourth of the way up, and he said, I'm not doing this. And he threw his backpack off and just down there. And I'm just froze on, oh dear, what am I going to do? Because all these people are around watching. What is the author of Positive Discipline going to do now? And so what I first did is I said, would you all just go on and we'll catch up? It is really hard to know that you've got people judging you and watching, what are you going to do? And I just asked them to go. And then I just started asking questions to Mark, and where does it hurt? And he was, and his dad then was listening and said, okay, maybe we can put this there that will help it. So we did start focusing on solutions because he didn't think it was funny, and it wasn't. He was hurting. So we fixed it, and he hiked it. But because we did listen, find a solution, and he hiked up with the rest of us. So yeah.
I think that's great, Jane. So if anyone is listening to us today, what recommendation would you give them to start educating their children in a different way?
Well, to me, this is one of the reasons I love curiosity questions. Is, it's sort of like, well, what happened? What do you think caused it to happen? How do you feel about it? What do you think you could do? Do you want some ideas? It's like we're always trying to lecture stuff in and kind of draw forth, trying to ask questions to help them. Okay. I'll tell you my favorite story was the time when Mary was in about the 9th grade, and there was a graduation party, and she came to me and said, "Mom, I think I'm going to get drunk at the party." Now, my temptation was, you better not. You're going to lose all your privileges. But I just said, well, tell me more about that. Why are you thinking of doing that? And she said, well, a lot of kids are doing it. It looks like they're having fun. And I said, well, what do you think the kids will, what do the kids say about you now? Because you don't drink. And she said, oh, they're just telling me they admire me and they're glad I'd be the designated driver. And I said, well, what do you think they will think about you tomorrow after you do this? And she thought about it. And that's how you know you're really asking curiosity questions, as they think about it. She says, I think that they might be disappointed in me. And I said, well, how do you think you'll feel about yourself? And she said, oh, I think I'll feel like a loser. And so she decided that she wasn't. And even then I said, Mary, I just really think it's so cool that you think about the future and what it means for you. And if you change your mind, you can still always call if you need help. But I just think that whole idea of trying to remember to help children, because when we lecture, they usually just close down. If we were paying attention and look in their eyes, they're gone.
Yeah.
Yet we think we're being a good parent because, by golly, they're not going to get away with this, and we're going to tell them what they need to do, instead of always trying to draw forth. And meanwhile, teaching skills, it is important to remember that children are making decisions from a very, very young age. Am I good? Am I bad? Am I capable? Am I not capable? And this is why, from a very young age, it's important to have them do chores and to help around the family. And one parent said to me, well, let's let her be child now. She can learn responsibility later. That's because they don't understand that children are making decisions about themselves that are very, very, from the day they're born.
Yeah.
Some people think even before they're born. And if they're deciding, oh, love means that I don't have to do things, then they're going to grow up thinking, oh, other people are supposed to do things for me. It's not easy for them to change and say, oh, I will feel better about myself if I contribute and if I help. And I just thought of one with one of my grandsons. He was running into the street, and he was only probably 2. And I ran after him and I grabbed his hand and said, don't run. And I just shouted. And later he said, you yelled at me, Grandma, and you hurt my hand. I said, I'm so sorry. I was really scared. I was scared that it might hurt. But then I said, so let me show you what we should go when we go. Let's go. And I wanted to look up there and tell me if any cars are coming. Look and tell me this way. So yeah, I did make a mistake. I grabbed him so hard it hurt. And I yelled at him, don't, so there are times when I'm sure that we're so scared that we're not going to think, oh, what do you think will happen if you run into the street?
One of the questions I get most frequently asked is, no, it's not a question. It's just something like, it's so hard to use positive discipline on a day-to-day basis because you get tired. So I wanted to ask you, has it been easy for you?
Well, see, I disagree that it's hard, or
Mm-hmm.
it's a different mindset. What I
Mm-hmm.
know is that before I learned positive discipline was much harder
Mm-hmm.
because I was, punishing, and then there's, always, and then I'd get permissive. And to me, learning these things like curiosity questions and focusing on solutions. Um, but Vanessa, I don't know if you've seen one of my latest activities. We do these experiential activities, and I have this activity called tools or tricks. Have you
Yeah.
seen some?
Yes,
Yeah.
I have.
And I love that one because so many people, some have just said it was raised by a question who said, well, I think that sometimes positive discipline is just tricks to make your
Mm-hmm.
kids do what you want them to do. And I said, I know people could use them that way, and it won't really be effective because they're only effective if they're based on those basic principles of positive discipline, that they're kind and firm, that they focus on solutions, that they work long-term, that they teach kids valuable social and life skills, and it teaches them to use their power constructively. And so if any of those are missing, it's not really a positive discipline tool, it's a trick. Because these are based in fundamental foundational beliefs about, and so then I would have them, if you think this didn't work, were you both kind and firm? Remembering that kind is not always nice, to say I love you and the answer is no.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And did it help the child feel belonging and significance?
Mm-hmm.
And did it teach them, for long term? So I think that when we really are, if they look and say, okay, what was missing, they can usually see what was missing.
Mm-hmm.
And so, in the long term, it's easier. Do you know that in class meetings, when I was a school counselor, and the teachers would come to me, and with whatever the problem was, I would say, put it on the agenda and let the kids figure it out. And what they did learn is that when kids were problem solving every day, it was easier.
Mm-hmm.
They said it would take so much time to have 20 minutes to do a class meeting. But what they all learned was, no, it took 20 minutes and it probably saved 2 hours.
Yeah.
And all the
Yeah.
things that we have to deal with, and that the kids aren't learning to cooperate. So that's what we're remembering. And it's really respecting children to grow and make mistakes, but always having the tools and the skills to deal with the mistakes. And that's what I think it's about for parenting too. Yes, we're going to make a lot of mistakes, and we have the tools to deal with those mistakes in respectful ways.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I think it takes a lot of practice. That's it. It's like you just said, it's a different mindset. So to change the chip we've grown with, which is one kind of mindset, and get used to this new kind of mindset, it's what takes time. But practice, I think practice and practice and practice helps us a lot. And always reminding ourselves that we're going to make mistakes. So there's no perfection in this. We're just trying to build strong connection with our children, right? I think that's the base of everything.
Exactly. And I think that, I don't know if I told this part when I was telling Mary she was a spoiled brat. Later, when I apologized, I said, I'm so sorry when I called you a spoiled brat. I was being one when I said that. She said, that's okay, Mom. I was being a spoiled brat. Oh no, it's like we were both taking responsibility without shame. And that's what we want, is kids to know that they can take responsibility without blame or shame, and then they can focus on solutions.
Great, Jane. Thank you so much. I don't know if you want to add something else before we close our talk together.
Well, that's another one I'm thinking about when you say they think it's so much harder. To me, one reason it can be so much easier is whenever there's a problem, you can say, oh, let's put that on the agenda and we'll talk about it later. Because it's not a cop-out. It's understanding that everybody can calm down, to feel better, they can access their rational brain. And then also, just having the item on the family meeting agenda, people are looking at it and they're often thinking about solutions. And when kids are fighting, do you guys want to put this on the agenda or do you want me to? I might say, do you want to go outside or do you want to go to separate rooms? Always giving them choices. It's not saying they won't ever fight. It's just knowing how to deal with the challenges that happen. And it's not saying they're going to be perfect to do their chores. Like I said, you have to come up with lots and lots of different solutions. It gives us this whole chore ideas gives us an opportunity to practice these skills every day. I have to say one other thing though, that my child, especially that I would nag the most about, you're so messy, your room's always so messy, which I learned to just shut the door. But now she's a neatnik who just has to have everything be so neat. So that's one of the things we have to remember, that who our children are today is not who they'll be forever. And what we want them to have is this atmosphere of that mistakes are okay, and that we have lots of tools for dealing with mistakes that are respectful to everyone.
Jane, I really appreciate you so much telling us a little bit about your life, leading us into your family to get to know you a little bit better, because since you are the founder of Positive Discipline, and we sometimes can imagine, well, she gets everything right or she got everything right, this gives us a different view. So I think it really helps us as parents to know that it's okay to make mistakes as long as we love our children and as long as we use as many tools as possible to educate them well. So thank you so much for your time, Jane.
Thank you. It's always a joy to be with you, Vanessa.
Thank you. I hope to see you soon and send you a big kiss and a lot of hugs. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.